Good evening, YouTube. This is the Atheist Killer, better known as the AK. I hope this evening finds you in good health and in good spirits, and I'd like to thank you for joining me. So let's get right into what this video is about. By now, everyone has probably heard of the moral argument for the existence of God. It's my opinion that this argument is airtight and completely solid. This is why William Lane Craig was forced into Eastwooding Richard Dawkins and essentially forced into debating an empty chair because Dawkins was too scared to show up and debate the issue. The argument goes like this if you are unfamiliar. Premise number one. If God does not exist, then objective moral values and duties do not exist. Premise number two. Objective moral values and duties do exist. Therefore, God exists. Since this is a logically valid syllogism, the atheist, in order to maintain his non-belief in God, must reject at least one of these two premises. So, in this video, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about objective moral values. What are they? Is there any evidence or proof that they do exist? If they do exist, where did they come from? And are they proof that God exists? I think we have good grounds and good reasons to believe that objective moral values exist, and few if any reasons to believe that they do not exist. So what are objective moral values? By objective morality, we mean a system of ethics which universally pertains irrespective of the opinions or tastes of a human person. But we should start with what objective means given the word's versatility. In philosophy, objective refers to something independent of the human mind. The object of perception does not change with our feelings, interpretations, and prejudices. So let's define what we mean by objective moral values. Objective moral values are moral values that are true independent of the belief of human beings. If objective moral values do exist, then statements like the Holocaust was evil can be objectively true, which means true to every person regardless of society, pressure, culture, or what an individual has learned. If objective moral values do exist, then the statement would be true even if the Nazis had won World War II and had convinced every human being in the entire world that the Holocaust was good. In other words, even if the Nazis convinced the entire world that the Holocaust was good, it would still be bad. In contrast, the proposition of moral relativism commits one to the proposition that moral statements like the Holocaust was evil are simply subjective. Meaning the Holocaust wasn't really evil because of some underlying reason, but it's only evil or bad in the eyes of some people depending on their societal pressures or learned behaviors from their culture. If some person or some society such as Nazi Germany believes that the Holocaust was good, then the Holocaust would be good for them. There would be no objective moral standard to which their assessment could be compared. You see, subjective moral values change from person to person, society to society, culture to culture, etc. If there is no objective morals, then subjective morality is all that there is. How do we know if objective moral values really exist or not? Let's look at some evidences that prove objective morals actually exist. One of the easiest ways to do this is simply to ask a basic question. Is child abuse and torture morally okay? Or is it morally okay to abuse and harass African Americans? Questions like these make it quite obvious that, morally, it is never okay. These are not learned values or subjective moral realizations. They are objectively wrong. Meaning even if your parents, culture, or society taught you it was okay to abuse and torture children, it would still not be okay. It would still be wrong. Nearly universally across human cultures, there exist the same basic standards of morality. In addition, there exists in all cultures truly altruistic acts which lead to no personal or genetic benefit. Cultures across the world and down through human history affirm that objective morals do exist. Indeed, cultures throughout history and across the world have affirmed many of the same moral values that we profess today. Murder is wrong, theft is wrong, lying is wrong, etc. It is not surprisingly that nearly all cultures affirm these kinds of basic ethical practices, since any culture that encourages murder, theft, and lying would quickly disintegrate. One of the funny things is that even the majority of people who explicitly deny the existence of objective morality still act as if objective morals exist. The vast majority of atheists can live moral lives. and even many atheists will emphasize that they live lives which are morally superior to those of moral realists or theists. Yet this leads to a curious observation. The behavior of atheists can indeed be partially explained by self-interest. If I value comfort, pleasure, and freedom, I cannot simply walk around torturing and abusing children, or I risk being imprisoned and arrested. But every one of us finds ourselves in situations in which moral infraction would lead to clear, immediate benefit with little or no chance of detection. For example, why not shoplift? Why not cheat on your taxes? Why not drive away from a fender bender if no one has noticed? No doubt some of the responses of atheists can be explained by fear of detection, but can atheists truly explain all of their behaviors in these terms? Was it all self-interest? Or was some of it motivated by an odd compulsion or preference to do what was right, even when no one was watching? Any honest person would have to admit that they often appeal to a higher calling of right and wrong even when no one's watching or looking, even if it would not benefit them in any way. Another point here is that the majority of philosophers recognize the existence of objective moral values. Obviously, an appeal to professional philosophers does not prove that objective moral values do exist, but it should give atheists a pause. Surely, of all people, philosophers ought to be the most familiar with the explanations of morality based on self-interest or evolutionary psychology, right? Or group selection. Isn't it odd then that they would be the ones who persist in affirming that objective moral values must exist? So, where do these objective moral values come from? Well, it seems fairly clear that if everyone is born with the same objective moral values, that they must have come from a creator. They must have been put inside of us for all of us to share the exact same ones. The only attempt to rescue this fact would be to try and somehow prove that evolution has ingrained these moral values into our DNA the same way that every human on the planet should have hands or feet. Atheists hold that if it cannot be explained outside the scientific theory, it doesn't exist. There is no supernatural in the atheist worldview. We are all a product of random evolution. Under this system, objective moral values cannot exist apart from the natural world. Under atheism, moral values must be an illusion of human beings, a product of random evolution and social conditioning. Moral values evolved to help the species survive and perpetuate. Right, atheists? If there is no God and we are all products of random chance, objective morality cannot exist. On this view, why think that human beings have any objective moral worth or value if there is no God? If all animal life is a product of random chance, why would humans be any more morally valuable than rats or insects? We'd all just be species trying to survive, and morality would be subjective to which viewpoint you wanted to take. Choosing the worth of humans over other species would just be a form of speciesism, a name coined by a British psychologist in the 1970s. It's much like racism, bigotry towards another species instead of race, by deeming them as inferior or an inferior species to yours. The naturalist or atheist may agree that human moral values exist. They just have no basis for stating that objective moral values exist if there is nothing beyond the physical world to base them on. Imagine this. It's 2020 and a world dictator arises who is twice as persuasive and twice as strong as Hitler and the Nazis ever were. Imagine he initiated and won World War III and continued to go throughout the world and gradually and systematically destroy nearly all people other than those of his same descent. He experiments, tortures, and kills all babies who are of other races other than his own. Suppose his people flourished, curing diseases with help from their medical experiments on the children. Suppose they thrived by gradually destroying every other nation on earth and taking over their territory and resources, keeping some as slaves to work as laborers in their concentration camps. Suppose the world population was increased at a steady, controlled rate because of the government breeding programs and immediate termination of unsanctioned pregnancies. On an atheist view, what is wrong with such a situation? If 99% of the people left alive on Earth believed that torture and slavery was okay, would that make it okay? No. If biological evolution and social conditioning are what moral values are based on and where they come from, then the answer would have to be yes. There would be no basis to say that there's anything wrong with the situation. The human species would be flourishing and healthy with lots to eat and producing plenty of offspring for the next generation. According to an atheist or naturalistic evolutionary theory, they would be fulfilling their purpose just fine. Some atheists, such as Richard Dawkins and Christopher Hitchens, insist that morality is simply the product of evolution. Common moral sensibilities, don't murder, don't rape, don't steal, etc., help ensure our evolutionary survival. There are a number of problems with this. Number one, rape may enhance the survival of the species, but does that make rape good? Should we still rape? Number two, killing the weak and handicapped may help improve the species and its survival. That was Hitler's plan. But does that mean the Holocaust was a good thing? No. Number three, evolution provides no stable foundation for morality. If evolution is the source of morality, then what's to stop morals from evolving or changing to the point that one day rape, theft, and murder are considered acceptable? Number four, Dawkins and Hitchens confuse epistemology with ontology, how we know something that exists with that and what exists. So even if natural selection or some other chemical process is responsible for us knowing right from wrong, that would not explain why something is right or wrong. How does a chemical process, natural selection, yield an immaterial moral law? And why does anyone have a moral obligation to obey a chemical process? You only have a moral obligation to obey an ultimate personal being such as God, who has the authority to put a moral obligation on you. You don't have a moral obligation to chemistry. So in conclusion, one quickly begins to see that without God there is no basis for objective moral values, and the moral argument for the existence of a God seems to be airtight. It seems surprising if the naturalistic atheist still claims to believe objective moral values exist even though there is no naturalistic explanation. Universally binding objective moral values exist if and only if God exists. Other claims of objectivity are based on subjectively assigning obligatory value to the object of perception. When we see these systems in conflict and must appeal to a higher ethic, it should raise further doubts about their status. I am Chad Elliott, the AK, Atheist Killer, back with a brand new video. I hope once again tonight finds you in good health and in good spirits. I hope you found this video to be informative. All the links will be posted in the credit section where I found this material. And I love you guys. I'm out of here. God bless. I hope to see you soon. Peace and love.